Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you again for your attendance at the 50th anniversary celebration for African American Studies on the campus of the University of Iowa.
So it's an honor to be able to welcome you to this event, the Darwin Turner Endowment Fundraiser Luncheon. And as you've heard already this morning, African American Studies at the University of Iowa has both a proud 50-plus year history and a bright future. Darwin Turner was, of course, a central part of that history as a literary critic, poet, professor, and notably department chair from 1972 to 1991. The endowment fund in his name includes initiatives that are central to the goals of the University of Iowa's College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Just mention a couple things: the Darwin Turner Scholarship, the AAS Seminar Series, bringing distinguished speakers to our campus, and African American Studies faculty development, assisting faculty with travel, scholarly conferences, or archives to help with research and creative projects, central to the strategic missions of our college. So that's what we're here to celebrate and to contribute to today. It was the president's address at the College Language Association conference at the Hampton Institute in Virginia, where he spoke. And it was entitled "The Status of Humanists and the Humanities." And Dr. Turner saw some serious problems. This is 1964, right? With the humanities at that time, namely a disconnect with the lives of students that he aimed to remedy with a critique and a call for renewal of the teaching of literature as an example of humanistic endeavor. So first, why for Dr. Turner were the humanities in crisis in 1964? And I quote, "Sputnik 1 terrified American businessmen and members of the PTA into demanding intensified instruction in mathematics, physics, and chemistry, the new gods to save America from Armageddon. Literature seemed impractical, except to those idealistic few who prayed for a poet to interpret science and the universe to man in such a way as to save him from this monster and from himself. Money, private and federal, was thrown upon the altar of science. Only a small amount, proportionally, has been doled out to the humanities," end of quote. As a dean, associate dean for arts and humanities, I relate to this. And interestingly, I was speaking with my colleague Cornelia Lang from Physics and Astronomy, who pointed out that the American response to Sputnik 1, Explorer 1, was designed here by James Van Allen and students right here at the University of Iowa. And unlike Sputnik, which was just a metal shell, Explorer was the first instrument of scientific measurement, so that it contributed not just to a Cold War competition, but to increase in our knowledge of our world. So also for my science colleagues here, very impressive achievement. And so Professor Turner called upon academics, though, in the humanities to embrace their vocation in working with students. To quote again, "Humanists need not fear the charge that they are not training students to do anything practical. A student needs to learn not merely to do, but also to be." I love that sentence from Darwin Turner. "A student needs to learn not merely to do, but also to be. And only the humanistic studies can provide this knowledge," end of quote. But how do we connect with students to impart this wisdom of the humanities? First, Professor Turner contends we must justify our selection of the works that we study. Quote, "We need to re-examine each course to determine its effectiveness for 20th century students," at that time. Let's just move that on to the 21st. To continue, "We need to evaluate the writers whose works we select, and we need to clarify our reasons for teaching particular works of those writers. We need to assert a reason other than antiquity for studying a work," end of quote. And as he concludes, he makes the following statement, quote, "We need to reintroduce drama. We consider literary the drama of Greece, of 17th century France, of 16th century England, but somehow we assume that drama subsequently became unruly and resigned from the discipline. Perhaps it became too modern. Regardless of the reason, teachings of literature ignore television or motion pictures except to ridicule their products. We teach Aristophanes' comedy, yet many current satires are equally sharp. We teach John Webster, yet an Alfred Hitchcock production represents the terror story of our century just as effectively. If we divorce ourselves from the entertainment media familiar to our students, we will affirm for them the fact that literature is enjoyed by those who do not enjoy normal activities in life, end of quote. And so he calls for change, a revitalization of literature and the humanities. And one more bit from Darwin Turner, quote, "The key to these changes, of course, is the teacher. As long as he believes that his is the only way to teach, the only materials worth teaching, literature will remain apart from life. Let the teacher revitalize himself," I would add herself, themselves, "by regaining his breath and dropping his mantle of priest, teaching a sacred mystery. Then let us revitalize the humanities by teaching them as more than the pastime of dilettantes, fragile glassware to be admired from a distance, or Sunday sermons for the board," end of quote. As we know, since 1964 to our day, in which I think we can see some parallels with the issues Professor Turner raised here, the humanities constantly have to be revitalized. The canon critiqued, our methods vigorously questioned. African American Studies has been a shining example of the interdisciplinary humanities on the campus of the University of Iowa for now over 50 years, and will continue to be at the forefront of skeptical humanist inquiry, challenging us all to better understand, indeed to live, as this understanding must be connected to life, and finally, as Dr. Turner says, to be in our ever-changing world. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone. Oh man, that's hot. Thank you for having me. So I was deciding or picking my brain, figuring out what to play, and I figured that on an occasion of this nature, it's probably best to play something that's close to your heart. So this is my favorite tune, written by a longtime collaborator and playing partner with Duke Ellington by a gentleman by the name of Billy Strayhorn. Man.
I don't know how I follow that, Professor Phillips. That was amazing. I think you should just keep playing, and we should, listen. So, thank you. Yeah, well, don't worry about that. We'll give you an excuse. That was fabulous. Thank you so much. The first time I met Venice, I guess, was a couple weeks ago. She was at the UNESCO City of Literature Board meeting. And not only is she busy leading this fabulous program, but she does all kinds of other things, including be on the UNESCO board. And I remember we were at the library together in a reception, and she came over and started talking to me about the program and about her daughter and about all kinds of other things. And I realized what we have there is an amazing faculty member who's leading us into the future. So I want to acknowledge all of Venice's work, tireless leadership behind the scenes and in front of the scenes and out in the community as well. So thank you for that. I'm delighted to be here. I'm only going to make a few remarks. As you've just heard, I'm 3 months into this position. I just celebrated my 3-month anniversary. I came from the University of Illinois, so across the Mississippi, from a state that has a lot more people and I'll just say many, many issues to deal with. And I came over to Iowa, and I've been excited to join this fabulous university. I hope you've gotten a chance to see the talent of our students, many of whom you heard from this morning, our faculty who are amazing, and the great staff that we have here. This is a place on the move, and we are excited to have you here to come back. If you've traveled, welcome. Thank you for being here. Sorry the weather isn't so good. We would have ordered sun if we had any control over the weather, we would have done that, because this is a fabulous view when it's a gorgeous day out. But it's a great place, and I just want to give you a sense of the kinds of things we're working on at this university as we move into the next 5 to 10 years. We're working on our strategic plan right now, and I would say it's all about people. We are laser focused on students, in particular on the retention and graduation rates of our students. They're not what they need to be, and we need to work hard to get those rates up and to make sure we don't lose talented students that we bring here, that we make sure they get all the way to graduation. And I'm sitting with 2 students that are going to graduate really soon, and they're very excited, and we're excited for them. It's music to my ears when I hear people are going to graduate, even if they leave the state. That's okay too. That's all right. So laser focused on retention and graduation, and with your help we can get those numbers up. We're doing a lot of work on campus, but of course our alumni and our tremendous community leaders can help us there. We're also focused on attracting and recruiting and retaining great faculty. And I just sat next to one of our faculty members who came here from the University of Tennessee, and I said, well, why did you come here? And he said, the offer was tremendous. And it came with an offer for both me and my wife. And so that's what I'd love to hear, that Iowa can attract people away from other universities and bring them here. And it sounds like we've been pretty good to you in your career so far. So you'll hear from him later, I think. But laser focused on recruitment and retention of faculty. And then I wouldn't say last, I would say it wraps around that. We are also very focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I hope you're getting a sense of that. We're putting a lot of money into that. I want to do a shout out to Liz Tovar in the back, who's been a great leader as she builds up our team. Yes, please give Liz a big round of applause, because when we bring people here to this community and to this university, we want to ensure that they feel welcome and they feel part of what we're doing. It's not always going to be easy. We have students coming here from rural communities who say this is a big city. Hello. We have people coming from Chicago who say this is the farmland. And we have people who are first in family to go to college. We have veterans who are joining us. And of course, we have students from underrepresented backgrounds and all kinds of LGBT students that we welcome, and we're excited to have them here. But it means we're going to have to stretch our brains and our hearts and figure out how to help people listen, learn, and understand each other. So that's what we're about, and I'm so excited about the African American Studies program celebrating its 50th anniversary. Anything that lasts 50 years is a good thing, and I think the future is quite bright. It's one of our most vibrant interdisciplinary centers on campus, or programs, and I can tell you the faculty are all about. They're in music, they have appointments in communication studies and journalism and mass comm and nursing and music. So I've said music already, but lots of different programs. And I think it shows the power of our interdisciplinary work here at Iowa. Everybody says they do interdisciplinary work, but when you really pull back and look at things, you don't always see it really on the ground in a live and active way. And here coming from Illinois, I can tell you this is a place that does interdisciplinary work, even across the river. So that river is one of our divides here, and we're always challenging ourselves. How do we bring people together, and how do we solve thorny societal problems from multiple perspectives? We need the humanities, we need the arts, we need the social sciences, and we need STEM, and we need health. And I mean, we can use COVID as a great example of how challenging problems are if we just look at it as a medical problem. Actually, this is a societal problem, and it involves all kinds of issues around philosophy, ethics, media. Oh my gosh, social media. What's the role of social media in this pandemic? Culture, environment, families, trust in institutions. It's all part of this. And unless we attack COVID from all those vantage points, we're not going to get to the bottom of it and make this place a better world to live. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm especially proud to give a big shout out to African American Studies, and of course to this wonderful, we're celebrating this endowment fund and continuing to nourish the gifts that come to us so that we can support our students and faculty. That's what we're all about. That's what we're going to continue to be. And thank you very much for inviting me for lunch, Venice.
I am so grateful to be amongst so many historians, icons, legends. Thank you for making me possible. So thank you for that. And this piece is a piece that I'm actually retiring. I wrote it as a freshman to really grapple with the identity of being an exceptional Black girl and also having to be exceptional in order to survive. So this poem is called Black Girl Blues. Thank you for listening. My skin is black, my arms are long, my hair is woolly, and my back is strong. My high school English teacher, in all her non-intersectional feminist glory, notices my silence on the one day I don't debate my misogynistic neighbor and asks why I'm being so quiet. Said I was blessed with the gift of words and didn't know why I was wasting it on my attitude, because obviously if a Black girl's words ain't taking up space, she gotta have an attitude. And before I could stop my great-grandmother from speaking for me, I said, last night, the Hudson River swallowed Sheila Abdul Salam whole and knew the only one to utter her name in the morning would be Instagram. Said last night, a Black mama lost her smile because none of one of our daughters ain't have enough prayers or breadcrumbs to make it back home. Said while America was still trying on cornrows, still copy and pasting our edges, sent slave catchers, police, to save the kidnapped daughters of Sojourner Truth's and Harriet Tubman's, dead or alive. And I was in mourning for all the girls who look like me and mines who won't make it to prom this year. And as she cried her Pepsi tears, I left before I felt like I was supposed to be apologetic. I wanted to say, to be a Black girl is to be ancient, have feet made of fossils, learning the oil spill of her birth, a hip strong enough for her kin, an underground railroad kind of backside to sit glass on, and still enough of herself to share in, easy like Sunday morning and quiet in her protest. I said, to be a Black girl is to be a crying sun, tears of skies holding on the stars. It's to be a sky holding itself close at night, be a night not worth remembering, be a memory yearning to be forgotten. I said to be a Black girl is to forget how much pixie dust burn our palms. We got cigarette holes on our shirt sleeves from all this loving and all this not being loved back, all this God we hold inside us. And don't this be the same God they say ain't Black? Same God they say ain't woman? I said to be a Black girl is to know there are nations crucifying us. Praise how pretty we is when we bleed, but never how strong we are when we clean out our own stains. And we confuse this for love too often. Confuse bruise for beauty mark, burden for sacrifice, and they use this love to justify leaving us for dead and calling our Black anything less than magic. Thank you.
Okay, so if any of y'all, I'm Tiana. If any of y'all heard earlier, I mentioned how I was currently on probation for a Class C felony, but hopefully if I finish it in their correct way, it'll be deferred. I actually wrote this poem last night, like I couldn't really sleep, so I started writing. And here it goes. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like the homies chanting for me to spit a poem off the brain while we all cuffed on our way to the jail. Looks like we all ended up here because I had a warrant out for my arrest and kept getting threatened to turn myself in, so I did, but not without an audience, not without a disturbance, not without news crews asking my last words. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon. Looks like we in this bitch because it was a protest outside to support me, so they had to scoop up a couple of the homies too. We all here because I spray painted a squad car and they got proof, but I wasn't trying to hide shit. And I wasn't finna deny shit. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like we calling the pigs what they really are, murderers, and red paint on they fancy ass pig pen on wheels. They may have caught me, but that ain't stopped me from spitting a poem in they faces while they transport us to Polk County Jail and make us out to be criminal for telling the truth. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like I'm here telling y'all about it, when they really tried to pin me with 10 years for a collective act of love. But here I am, in college still, on probation now, because they evidence didn't really mean shit, not when they can't back up a felony charge with it. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like they had to drop the charges, because if it was Becky's car, it would have been simple vandalism, but since it was the government's, they tried to up the charges on a bitch. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like we already had the mutual aid number memorized in our heads, because this ain't the first time they cupped us over some dumb shit. My first call out the jail was for the community to pay my bail, because we really bout this. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like I've been here before, but not without a fight. Not without some bruises, because pigs like to play dirty, but they don't like their name being dragged through the mud. Very contradicting of them. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like I'm in the back of a paddy wagon a second time for believing black people are supposed to live. How radical of me to think we ain't supposed to be dead. How radical of them for not killing us instead. An activist manifesto in the back of a paddy wagon looks like a poem I'm lucky enough to still have the breath to spit.
Now our guest speaker has to follow that. I want to introduce Dr. Amilcar Shabazz. He is president of the National Council of Black Studies, and he's a professor at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and he's going to talk about the importance of African American studies.
President Wilson, Dean, Professor Berry, Mama of Professor Berry, brother of Professor Berry, the whole African American studies community. I'm honored to be here. Also, I'll say 06. First of all, servants of all, we what? 50 years. Let us begin with the anthem that has guided us from over 100 years. Lift every voice and sing, till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise, high as the listening skies. Let it resound as loud as the rolling sea. In April of 1968, I think I was in the third grade. And as a former faculty member of my department once said, the writer, the scholar, Julius Lester, Black Studies was born because a man died, because in 1968 a man died. Dr. Martin Luther King, perhaps the greatest of all alpha men, but a great alpha man, was gunned down in Memphis, Tennessee. Black Studies was born out of that tragedy. I was in the 3rd grade, and for me, the impact from that grade on through many grades in my all-black, completely segregated, racially hierarchical, outcasted reality in Beaumont, Texas, at West Oakland Elementary School, what it primarily meant is Ms. Coleman, my teacher, and then subsequent teachers, you'd see them just bringing into the curriculum things that had not been approved by the white power structure. One of them being the poetry of a man named Langston Hughes. Life for me ain't been no crystal stair. I remember mother to son, and I was raised by a single mother after my folks split. I was raised by my grandmother, so the feeling of that mother to son was a feeling that reached me. And indeed, Langston Hughes is the first poet I would know and say, oh, this is what poetry is. So in 1968, one of the greatest voices for justice in human history, Martin Luther King, was taken from us, but we came back. We were resilient. And that voice was then replaced with many voices. We lifted more voices. And we began to sing a song full of faith that the dark past has taught us. Singing songs full of hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. And so the marchers came, and the Ford Foundation grants were written, and more black students began to arrive in American higher education, particularly at what had been your predominantly white institutions, UMass Amherst, University of Iowa, University of Texas. More began to come in 69, in 1970. And as they got there, they bringing that voice they were raising, that our lives matter. We want education. We want higher learning. But then confronting a campuses that were not as fully welcoming of this increased black presence. The cry began to come out in 10-point programs. The cry began to come out in student demands. The cry began to come out for more black faculty, more black staff, more black administrators, more black students, more black ideas, issues in the curriculum, in our social sciences, in our public health studies. Because we're coming out of a dark past. We're not coming to these predominantly white institutions coming out of Kansas, coming out of Paradise. We're coming out of a dark past that has taught us we got to be resilient and we got to keep resisting. Resisting our oppression, resisting our marginalization, resisting our exploitation until victory is won. Oh yes, stony the road we trod. Bitter the chastening rod. Felt in days when hope unborn had died, For me, I was surprised later in my life when I came to find a poem by Langston Hughes that was a poem that centered in it my hometown. I'm like, what? Beaumont? Beaumont made it into a poem by what for me was the greatest poet, you know, the truest poet I'd ever read to that point? Yes. In May to August of 1943, during the Great War, during World War II, a series of pogroms, so-called race riots, swept the land, swept the United States. We thought it was all over in 1921, in this year of the centennial of the destruction of Black Wall Street, the destruction of Greenwood community of Tulsa, Oklahoma, which we rightly acknowledge as one of the great American tragedies. It didn't stop there. It wasn't the last race riot, so-called, in this country. My hometown, including Detroit, including other places, but I want to speak of Beaumont, and the poem is entitled, by Langston Hughes, Beaumont to Detroit, 1943. And I learned about this poem in a Black Studies class when I was an undergraduate at the University of Texas. And I'm like, this can't be. This is talking about my hometown? Beaumont to Detroit, 1943. Looky here, America, what you done. Let things drift until the riots come. Now you're policemen. Let your mobs run free. I reckon you don't care nothing about me. You tell me Hitler is a mighty bad man. I guess he took lessons from the Ku Klux Klan. You tell me Mussolini's heart. Mussolini's got an evil heart. Well, it must have been in Beaumont that he had his start. Because everything that Hitler and Mussolini do, Negroes get the same treatment from you. You Jim Crowed me before Hitler rose to power, and you're still Jim Crowing me right now, this very hour. Yet you say we're fighting for democracy. Then why don't your democracy include me? I ask you this question because I want to know how long I got to fight both Hitler and Jim Crow. So I had to go home on that one and say, Grandma, Mama, what they talking about in 1943? Y'all never told me. I'm born in the 60s. Y'all had forgotten about it? What happened back in 43? That was Black Studies, beginning to ask the questions that I needed to know, that we needed to know. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed? They were sending me to the University of Texas. I wasn't first generation. My mother's brother had gone to the University of Texas as the first African American in the field of microbiology in the 1950s. Graduated from there, went on to be a research scientist at the labs of the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Peoria, Illinois. My mother was the first to attend Lamar University in Beaumont in fall of 1956, and to graduate from there in 1958, become a teacher for more than 3 decades after that in the schools of Beaumont. But they looked at it as that continuation, that marching on till victory is won. I was going on to the University of Texas. So wasn't this where our fathers, this land, had sighed for? So they didn't want to give me the stories of the gloomy past. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out of the gloomy past, till now we stand at last where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. You're that bright star. Shabazz, go on. We don't want you cluttered with all of this. That was 43. Forget that. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who has by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. The University of Texas, I found Black Studies. So I'm there in the 70s. And the embodiment of it was a professor named John Warfield. He wasn't the first. The first who actually started things was a man named Henry Allen Bullock, whom I would later study and write about his work when he was at Prairie View. He conducted a series of studies as a sociology professor at Prairie View A&M in the 30s, carrying on the tradition of his teacher, his mentor, W.E.B. Du Bois, who had the Atlanta University studies, giving you now the antecedents to the Black study movement after 1968. There had been Black studies already. Huh? It wasn't in your predominantly white institutions. Oh no, that was, of no concern. Maybe a University of Chicago was doing a little something here and there in a few little places here and there, studying the Negro, training a few Negroes. But these were people doing it because they saw it as vital, because Black Lives Matter, they had to do it. Du Bois in the early 1900s at Atlanta University. His student, Henry Allen Bullock, carrying it on in the 1930s through annual studies, bringing together the best minds on problems of crime, on problems of education, on problems of economics, of wealth gaps, of problems in all these areas, a different theme each year. And he'd bring policymakers and government officials, if he could get them to come out, to hear the presentations on the status of African Americans. 30s. So now Henry Allen Bullock, more toward the twilight of his career, is recruited in the 60s to the University of Texas to run Black Studies, to start a Black Studies unit there. And understand, in 68, the reigning idea, Ford Foundation, all of these predominantly white institutions that were begrudgingly starting Black Studies on their campuses, is that it would not last. It was not designed to last. It was not projected to last. It's let's do it right now. Cool these kids out. Let them come in. Trick them in here, that we got some stuff for you. But eventually this thing is going to fade, or maybe it can stay on as just some research initiative if some faculty, particularly white faculty, are getting some good grants. They can keep something going. We can say that's Black Studies. But as an academic unit, no. It was expected to pass. But that resilience, that fight, that sense of duty to lift every voice. Lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. They expected those Black professors, once they got in there and got their tenure and, could go to the faculty clubs and the faculty meetings and mingle with the superior caste of people, the superior racial caste in America. Forget all that. Forget the ghetto. Forget those people in the ghetto. You're beyond that. You've transcended that. You're with us now. You're able to buy a house out here in the suburbs with us. We play bridge with you. We have you over, and wine and cheese cheese with us. So forget all of that. Drink, have another drink. Did you like the Cabernet, or would you like to try? Let's have a nice aperitif, huh? Let's have a Riesling with some dessert and more cheese, a cheesy dessert to cool everything out. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land, our native land. So we didn't forget, at least some of us. We kept pushing. We formed the National Council for Black Studies in 1975 to get us systematized, to get us to figure out How do we keep this thing going? How do we keep it alive? Okay, we need standards. We need some form of accreditation, or we need some form of clarity about what are the core cognates, and how do we then circulate these ideas amongst ourselves and get our departments a little more routinized. We're a new thing, but we've got to find a way to match and to look and to assess ourselves in ways that our peers can understand and in ways that we can understand what we are doing with some sense of continuity, some sense of collectivity, some sense of an ultimate purpose. If we're going to live, if we're going to survive. And folks came together. Our founder, woman out of the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, Bertha Maxwell Roddy, started going up to the College Board and the ETS, Educational Testing Service. They were interested. They started paying for black folks, the scholars in black studies, to come together, have a free lunch on them, and to talk these issues of assessment and curriculum and pedagogy. We began to promote models, people putting in diligent time to get this discipline, to get this new emerging field to be more of a discipline. Let us discuss and critique the three central ideas of black studies that black people themselves started. Let us be clear. We argue for three modes that the field has experienced: intellectual history, social movement, and academic profession. We say these are academic excellence, social responsibility, and cultural grounding. One of our scholars, Abdullah Kalimat, has argued that the field has generated three emerging points of departure. These are Afrofuturism, the African diaspora, and E-Black, which is the use of digital methods to archive, preserve black experience. The Black Studies Archive preserves and interprets the records that help to tell the story. So these 50 years, we're promoting all of, the NCBS is promoting all over campuses. Document your journey into black studies all the way to where you are today, and keep that documentation going. Listening to Dr. James Robinson today, going up to the Special Collections Library here and finding on the black experience at University of Iowa, 2 boxes. He and Professor Berry said, no, there got to be more boxes in here than this. And rescued from the home so that it didn't go into oblivion. 80 boxes of the Dr. Darwin Turner papers that I look forward to coming back and studying. I look forward, if we can, to work with you, to help you in any way, to get them digitized. At the University of Massachusetts, my colleagues, every department has different flavors. The flavor of mine was radical black Marxism, okay? Radical black activists, radical black Marxists. It actually starts with the students of Sterling Brown. Sterling Brown at Harvard University, Howard University, Harvard. At Howard University, what we call the Dean of African American Literature Studies, Literary Studies, a white scholar on the UMass Amherst campus had been reading him out of his own personal interest, and writes to him at Howard and says, here in the University of Massachusetts, we're out in the woods, woods of Amherst, but we'd love it if there are any of your students finishing at Howard would like to go on for the PhD. I assure you the English department here will welcome them, and we will work with them to get their PhDs in English. Sidney Kaplan began talking to his students about that opportunity. He goes to Mike Thelwell. Mike Thelwell is busy with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, comrades with all these other Afro-Caribbeans who are putting their lives on the line, like Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, Ivanhoe Donaldson, and others that are all in to this movement, going down to Mississippi getting beaten with Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, going to Parchman Penitentiary, the University of Parchman. But, and indeed, as Mike begins to graduates, because he stays on track, even through all those experiences, stays on track, he's graduating Howard, the INS show up, because he's from Jamaica. He's here on a student visa. So, Professor Thelwell, you're graduating. We'll be glad to see you leave the United States of America. When is your flight out? Mike said, oh, I wasn't quite ready to go back to Jamaica yet. I thought I still have things to do here. So he goes and he ferrets out of the trash the letter that Sterling Brown or had gotten him from Sidney Kaplan saying, come to UMass. And he comes to UMass. He gets an MFA at UMass and is engaged while he's as a grad student in developing the inquiry on the campus and in the department. William Styron had come out with the Confessions of Nat Turner. And for those of us in 68, 69, getting into black history, getting into the black story, Nat Turner is one of those figures would jump up out of the oblivion. Wow, he did this, 1831? And so now this icon of the black power, you know, that black power are looking back to in Sankofa, in that Sankofa way, are now like, Styron is writing his story, this white man? And what has he got to say? That, oh, the only reason he's doing it because he's got these repressed fantasies of being with white women and this is, and so he, and so Thelwell says, well, we ought to have a discussion of this. And he convenes writers and scholars and, you know, of the caliber of Darwin Turner to look at the book and give your own thoughts and reflection. Even James Baldwin, whom he knew from the movement. Baldwin's answer was clear. He says, look, you don't like Styron's, write your own. You, black young writer, you write your story of what Nat Turner means to you, of who Nat Turner is. Worry about what Styron has done, and don't worry about all the accolades he's getting from the white publishing world and the white media, you know, reading public. You can expect that. But write yours and tell the story so well that the world can look at it and learn from it and be touched by it. So they put together that book on the Styron controversy and confession. This is as a grad student. He's writing essays. He's publishing. And he finishes his MFA thesis. And he's being asked everywhere to talk about the emerging black studies movement, 68, 69, such that the campus says, why are we going to let Mike leave us? Maybe we should try to recruit him to really start black studies here. We started as a program within the English department. When Mike got in there and began to lay out and talk to the people all over the country, get the ideas of the models that were circulating, produced this wonderful proposal for a department. It went all the way through the faculty senate. It went all the way to our board of trustees, and in the April meeting of our board of trustees, we were approved to be a freestanding, degree-granting, tenure-conferring department. And they built a sterling faculty. The ranks of our faculty have included artists like Archie Shepp, Max Roach, Nelson Stevens in the visual arts, Sister Shirley Graham Du Bois, a great intellect of her own, taught in our department for 2-3 years. The stepson of W.E.B. Du Bois and Shirley Graham's son taught black journalism in our department, coming off of his experiences of editing the Black Panther paper out in the West Coast. James Baldwin was with us for a time. Chinua Achebe was with us. And we went on and we had dips and highs and lows. But we persevered, we continued to build, publish, the research, the scholarship, such that we were the ones there to get the Du Bois papers, our relationship with Shirley Graham. So we're not the W.E.B. Du Bois department, a named department for nothing. We have the papers of W.E.B. Du Bois, and we have digitized them, thanks to a grant from the National Endowment of the Humanities and Verizon. Some of you may have as your cell phone carrier here. One little good plug for that, maybe, for the day. But yes, Verizon gave us money, and you can get it now. The search engine is Credo, UMass, C-R-E-D-O. Plug you right into the Du Bois papers, and we've been adding. We now have the Horace Mann Bond papers, if you know that name. We have other papers, fully digitized, no firewall, no paywall, free, open, anywhere in the world. You can access the internet. You can get right into the papers of W.E.B. Du Bois. So this is the work, and the work continues. Let us invest. Let us uphold this name of Darwin Turner in all the great legacy it has meant. You know, you sent us to my department, one of our PhD alums that we are so proud of, in Sean Alexander. After he finished his bachelor's, he came here and studied with you in the 90s, and then came to us after that and got his PhD work. He is now at the University of Kansas, a tenured full professor, director of the Langston Hughes Center there, and also moderator, editor of our HNet listserv, HAfro. Very active, very prolific, many books. Sean Alexander. So we have these networks in common, these networks together. And so I project we are building for the next 50 years even greater accomplishments. But one of those right now needs to be to archive our legacies for this period of our institutional experience, the past 50 years, to also consolidate our centers of excellence. And if we believe that what we've been doing here at the University of Iowa represents a center of excellence, let's make it a department again. Let's bring it back to department status. This is not just for the idea of it, it's that it gives you a coherent faculty of your own that, in the most ideal of circumstances, works together for that triple mission of research, teaching, and service. In this particular discipline, without the divided loyalties, you can have the network of cross-listers, great people from the music faculty joining in. You can build that, but that's your second line around the core. That's your second line around the core. The core is your department faculty who are able to give the consistent pedagogical, curricular, and intellectual attention to your students that they need and deserve. And I don't like to often promote, building all the way up to the PhD program, because that's just more competition for my department. But we gotta have centers of excellence in that way too. We're up to a little over 15 now, PhD programs. Temple was the first in Philadelphia. We were the second at UMass Amherst. UC Berkeley came along shortly after that. The great Darlene Clark-Hine built it in 2 campuses. She built it at Michigan State when she was there, and then when she went to Northwestern, she built the PhD program at Northwestern. So all praises to Darlene Clark-Hine. Harvard is now in the game, and many others. UT Austin, my alma mater, is now just graduated last year, their first PhDs. So I envision there could be up to 25, 30, who knows, maybe one in every state, and a couple of, we don't know. But we've got to figure out where we're going and where we're growing, and we need Iowa in that conversation. Thank you.
Actually, slight correction. I'm actually Caleb the Negro artist after Langston Hughes is the Negro artist in The Racial Mountain. I found that and it affected how I became an artist, and I said I gotta take that on. So if you haven't read it, please read that essay. Let's see. I was trying to figure out what it is I wanted to share with you all today, and I was thinking about the African American Studies program. And one of the things that worked for me is I'm a 2017 grad, and I was thinking about when I went through my journey here at the University of Iowa, one of the things that I was constantly thinking about is what am I allowed to talk about and what am I not? And the African American Studies program and the spaces that I got to have, those courses I got to take, were often the safest places to be and to talk about the things that really mattered. But this piece kind of reflects on that other end when I was trying to function through a PWI. So this piece is for my first book called Look Black Boy, and it's actually a little bit call and response, a little engagement here, so I'm gonna need y'all to like loosen up here. When I ask a question, I need y'all to answer, so can y'all do that? Yes. Thank you. Oh, we are black in this space. All right, so this piece is called Taboo, an expansion pack. For those of you who don't know, Taboo is a family game in which you pull a card, and on the top of that card there is a noun. The objective is to get your teammates to guess that word. The trick is that there are a list of words and phrases you cannot say when describing that key word. Now I have created an expansion pack. I wanted to know if y'all will play with me. Will y'all play with me? Hell yeah, all right. Okay, first one's easy. When you make someone pick cotton but don't give them anything for their efforts, what do we call that? Slavery. Right, I couldn't say black because that was a given. I couldn't say Native Americans because they didn't survive. I couldn't say still exists because some people would get mad. But all right, okay, we go on to this next one here. All right, it was the cause of the last card. Another way to put it is when you treat someone lesser because of their shade. What do we call that?
Capitalistic racism.
Okay, we went specific, and I like it. You gonna get the degree. Right, racism. I couldn't say black because that would be playing the race card. I couldn't say systematic because we're pretending that doesn't exist. I couldn't say reverse because that actually doesn't exist. And I couldn't say microaggressions because I'm supposed to be happy they're not calling me nigger anymore to my face. But all right, okay, we gotta move on to this next one. Okay, we got tough really quick, so hold on with me, okay? Imagine you have a family portrait. It's the kind of painting that is created by your grandfather's God-sent artistic hand. The canvas captures your mother's smile, caring and gentle. Your father's chin is strong and high. You are with your siblings, innocent, simply innocent. Now, imagine I stole it. We all know I stole it, but I sold it for, let's say, $3.3 billion. You take me to court, prove that I stole it, and to right my wrongs, I find your painting, torn to unrecognizable shreds, dry dirt caked across the faces, dumped into a dilapidated box, and I hand it to you, tell you we're even, tell you I did you a favor, tell you jigsaw puzzles build character. Now what do we call that? Reparations. I couldn't say the US government because that would sound unpatriotic. I couldn't say we're still trying to put the pieces back together because that would be playing the victim. I couldn't even say we have all the pieces because I can't seem to find peace of mind. And when I couldn't come up with the words to say at all, I wouldn't even be allowed to kneel. Because come on, we're trying to play a game here. But all right, okay, we got time for one more here. So I'm just gonna, all right. I'm gonna just name people who have this. Donald Trump, Darren Wilson, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Hillary Clinton, Taylor Swift, all of my high school teachers, my AP classmates, my college colleagues, every police officer I've ever met, the judge that I have a 33% chance of meeting, the jury that will not be made up of my peers, the news reporters that will cover the story if I don't live to see the courtroom, the people who are called by name. not color. What do we call that? Privilege. I couldn't say white because they made all the rules. I couldn't say that their parents laid down 5 dice and all they had to do was yell Yahtzee. I couldn't say they started Uno with 2 cards in their hand. I couldn't say they skipped to phase 7 because then they'd say, I just don't know how to play the game. Say that I just don't have a clue. Say it's my fault the mousetrap fell. Say I should have stayed out of trouble. Say I should have avoided the chutes even though they took all the ladders. Say losing must be in my DNA, but never question why winning is in theirs. Say that's just life. But between you and me, I am tired of playing the same game. It's like I was dealt cards against humanity, and to play, I had to take a risk, but there was a monopoly on power, and I couldn't pay rent, so I started my way back to the beginning because I was so afraid. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, what am I supposed to do when my whole life is taboo? Thank you.
Now, we are here because we are excited about the work that in essence has been done. We are here because we have been an integral part of the process. As you talk about Dr. Turner, and as we call him, Brother Dr. Darwin Turner, we want you to know that he had a life outside of what was happening here at the university. We want you to know that he was the youngest graduate at the University of Cincinnati at the age of 16. We want you to know that not only was he committed to the institution, but he was committed to the community. We want you to know that he is a charter member of not 1, but 2 chapters, including the chapter here in Iowa. We want you to know that. We also want you to know that we continue to watch and monitor the legacy of the things that happen at what we believe should be the department. We want you to know that Horace Porter, we call him Brother Dr. Horace Porter, is a member of our community. We want you to know that Brother Dr. Damani Phillips is a part of our community. We want you to know that we care just as much about this institution and about this as we believe it should be department as anyone. And we believe that we have a responsibility for its overall success. Now, I'm a Morehouse man. So when you talk about Brother W.B. Du Bois, then I'm feeling that. And I'm feeling the understanding of what he did at Morehouse and what he did at the university, at Atlanta University. And his commitment to excellence and to scholarship. And so we, again, appreciate those things. But the one thing that we wanted to make sure, as Dr. Berry was taking the role of leading this group, is we wanted to make sure that she knew that she was not in this by herself. Now, I have been watching her for around 10 years, a little bit more than that. And I've come to her several times, and she has worked very hard to try to make things happen, and she's felt sometimes that she's been by herself. And the commitment that we made to this $50,000 goal is that we would raise 10% of the money. We have, as you can see, other brothers that we want to honor within this, which we believe should be a department, to make sure that they're memorialized and their focus on scholarship is committed. But what we did at least want to do is let you know that to date, we have donated and raised, and we have a memorial check for you, $2,000 for this goal. Now, the department has been here 50 years. I'm an alum of the Tippie School. I've been an alum for 30 years. Actually, this is my 30th year anniversary. But Alpha Phi Alpha has been here in March 11th of 2022. We'll be here 100 years. So it's more than 100 years of black folks learning how to thrive and survive here in Iowa, and doing a very good job of that. We'll talk more about that as we get into what happens next year, and I won't bore you with that now. But what we do want you to know is that we clearly have a strong commitment for the success of you all as individuals, as professors, as students, as not only faculty, but as staff. We have a vested interest in your ability to teach us about our history and to make sure that it's never forgotten about who we are and whose we are. May God continue to bless you, and we appreciate all the work that you've done. But Dr. Berry, we appreciate no more than you and your commitment to being exceptional. Thank you.
A wonderful luncheon. I really have appreciated all the support and all the love. I do want to recognize our sponsors, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Liz Tovar and her group, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, always support us and give us a lot of love, and also the Office of the Provost, and the University of Iowa Lecture Committee. So thank you everyone for your support.
Hello, I'm Barbara Wilson. I'm the 22nd president of the University of Iowa. I'm thrilled to be here. This is a great celebration of a wonderful program, the African American Studies program, 50th anniversary. So I was invited here to come and give a few remarks at lunch, and it's been just an amazing experience to hear from students, to hear from faculty, to hear from alums, and then to see the money that's been raised for this endowment fund. It's pretty phenomenal, and we're going to just keep things going, moving forward. All the momentum here is fabulous. So thank you.